All right, friends, it is time to argue. Yes, I asked you for your hottest of hot fashion hot takes. I collected all of them, and I'm going to be answering them. Do I agree with your terrible, terrible, offensive opinions about fashion, or are we going to argue? Let's get into it. All right, our first take here. The trend of having a fashion uniform is overrated. While it's good for sustainability and saving money, there's something to be said for stepping outside of a comfort zone every now and then. Okay, so I think I agree with this. In my mind, well, there's a difference, okay? Here's the difference. There is fashion and there is style. So in my opinion, fashion is about always pushing forward, finding the next thing. It doesn't have to be the new thing. In my opinion, it just has to be the next thing. Fashion is about pushing forward in your style. And that is different from just style, because style is just what you think works for you. And a uniform is great in that sense, when somebody finds the style that specifically works for them. I do think uniform often tends to get kind of lumped in with just minimalist, and I do think we need to separate those out. People can have a uniform that is not minimalist in any way, shape, or form. So I think uniforms are important for us in our everyday lives. You know, I work a job. I don't wear like a uniform, but I do have a certain set of style codes that I put myself in when I go to work. So in that sense, uniforms are very important, but that does not mean that they are fashion, and a lot of people do make that mistake. I think Prada is a brand that gets brought up all the time in reference to uniforms. Miuccia Prada finds uniforms incredibly important. It's something that she plays with all the time in her work, and I think that's fine, and that's good, but Prada is always pushing that uniform forward so it becomes fashion. It's when the uniform becomes stale and it becomes a box that you put yourself in that you can't break out of. That is when the uniform becomes kind of more of a crutch, more of a liability than it is a positive, even if it does make getting ready in the morning quite a bit easier. All right, here is a hot take for you. Athleisure is the bane of modern fashion and is being led by Fear of God Fog Essentials. It's so low effort that the art of dressing up is dying. Man, I really disagree with this. I really disagree with this, and it's not even because I find the take so offensive. I do agree that the athleisure thing, whatever, the loungewear thing, it got really overworked, and it's super stale and kind of cringy. Like when I see people just out and about in joggers and a sweatshirt, kind of like neutral tones, whatever, that Fear of God Essentials kind of uniform, now that we're talking about that, it is kind of cringy to me. But I don't think it's ruining fashion at all. So fashion is an industry. It's a business, right? It goes where they are going to make money. And what did we just go through? Just think about the past few years. We just had COVID. And if you've read any of the industry trades, like the publications and things that talk about fashion, you will know that the market for athleisure and loungewear just exploded during the COVID pandemic. And it's understandable. Everyone was stuck at home. They just wanted something comfortable to lounge in, but they still wanted to feel fashionable in some way, shape, or form. And I think that is what led to Essentials blowing up so huge, and what led to every brand under the sun. Like, think about how many Balenciaga sweatsuits you saw over the past few years, right? It's just gone wild with every brand doing it. And I think it is too much. There's a place for it. You know, if you as a brand want to have a breadth of offerings, if you want to have a piece of clothing for every type of occasion, it makes sense to have athleisure or gym wear or things like that, and I think that's useful, but it became something that brands were relying on too much. But I think your take here is a little bit late, because we're already starting to see that shift. Now that things have opened back up, people are going back to work, the world is going out again. you are starting to see in the fashion collections now in just the past couple seasons, it is going heavily, heavily back into tailoring. It may not be the tailoring of the past. Like, I don't know anything about you, the person who left this comment, but I don't know if you're one of those like bespoke gentleman kind of people. Like, you really just want like a nice Ermenegildo Zegna suit or Canali suit or whatever. But that type of kind of like, dandy men's suiting is probably gone, maybe forever. But tailoring itself is really, really in right now. It's probably the sharpest area for fashion right now. There are a lot of brands doing really incredible tailoring, and the market is opening up for that very, very heavily. And I think that's gone in line with like the Logomania branded t-shirts heavily falling out of favor as well. So I think if you left this take 8 months ago, I may have had a very different answer, but now I think things are coming back your direction, the tailoring direction. Despite controversy, I would say Gosha Rubchinskiy captured Eastern Europe Slavic high fashion streetwear, ready-to-wear runways better than Demna has through Vetements and Balenciaga, at least when he was still doing season-to-season collections. Demna is still goated, this is just my opinion. So, if you are not familiar with Gosha Rubchinskiy, he is kind of a legend. Like, his stuff was really, really good, and that's where I agree with this take. Gosha was something special, and it's kind of weird he got caught in one of those, like, is it really that bad Me Too kind of things, where it wasn't like a Harvey Weinstein thing where it's clear, like, yes, this person needs to get out of this business and into jail. Gosha was kind of in that gray area, and I think people just didn't want to be involved with it. They didn't want to be associated with it because it was just kind of weird. So he really got pushed out of fashion. And I don't know, is that worthy? Was he worthy of that? Was he not? That's for each individual to decide, but it is sad not having Gosha's designs out there. He had his own Gosha Rubchinskiy brand, which was, they're correct. It had that Eastern European streetwear vibe. Perfect. Even today, it holds up incredibly well alongside that early Vetements stuff that was referenced from Demna. But he then got left in the cold. He did GR Uniforma, which was a kind of, slightly more upscale, tailored approach. And it was decent, but not nearly as exciting as the early Gosha stuff. But here's where we're at today. And this is like complete gossip, rumor, conspiracy theory. I have no idea if it's true, but I hope it is. And it kind of like feels true. It just has that truthiness to it. So I have heard rumors from random people on the internet that may know nothing about anything. I've heard rumors that Gosha may be potentially heavily involved with the Vetements diffusion line, VTMNTS. I don't know if you're familiar, if you've seen this, but there's Vetements, and then recently, just in the past year or two, they put out a second line, VTMNTS. Ooh, that's a mouthful. And in many ways, it looks incredibly similar to mainline Vetements, but it does have that extra edge of the Eastern European streetwear early Vetements stuff, and you can see the through lines between that and the early Gosha stuff. So if that's true, it's very exciting. I just kind of want to know the truth. If there are any insiders out there, if you know what Gosha's up to, and if he is inside the Vetements camp, shoot me a line. Let me know. Oh, I was almost going to move on, but I forgot to answer the second part of that. They were also comparing Gosha to Demna at Balenciaga and Vetements. I don't think you can say that. So Gosha was a star that burned very, very bright and then burned out. Whether that was called for or not, he did burn out. Whereas Demna now has a history of work, has an archive that is very, very impressive. I think you could definitely, the best Gosha stuff you could absolutely argue may be better than the best Demna stuff. But Demna just has the track record now and so many hits that it's hard to make the comparison. But I do think it's not crazy to make the comparison. It is a valid comparison to make. All right, next one. It's not fashion anymore when all the brand does is try to create the most unwearable but suited for social media look. Hey, look at me for 5 seconds. What a waste of resources. I would like you to send me some examples of this, because I do not think fashion has gotten any more unwearable just for social media's sake. If you look back throughout time, look to the 80s, 90s, look at Comme des Garçons, any of the best avant-garde designers, they were always creating incredibly unwearable stuff. Maybe it's just gotten more visible with social media. I don't know if you have an idea that fashion was always supposed to be something you could just throw on and go out, but runway fashion has not always, but often been quite unwearable, and I think that's a good thing. So I just think this take is incorrect. You may not like how they're marketed, how the brands put those high fashion avant-garde pieces out there on social media, but I think they always existed. One thing I will say, I think you do see certain things happening because of social media. For instance, you see a lot of neon, like fluorescent colors these days, like bright pinks and fluorescent yellows and things like that. And I do think that is because of social media, because it pops much more off the screen. So there are things happening because of social media, but does that mean they are not fashionable or that they shouldn't exist? I don't think so. I think the neons are pretty cool. I think unwearable sculptural artistic pieces are also cool. I'm glad that they exist, and therefore your take is wrong. The next take is a very short one. It says, Mike Amiri is not good, in my opinion. Nor in mine. I think that's a fair way to say it. Mike Amiri is not good. And it's interesting that you separate Mike Amiri from Amiri the brand. I'm assuming you're using them interchangeably, but I do think you're correct to separate them. So first, let's talk about the brand Amiri. As a brand, I hate it. It's terrible. The brand identity, the shows they do, the lookbooks, it's everything I find just kind of like gross about fashion. Very disposable. The athleisure is in there. It's like this kind of like flowy, I don't know, beachy kind of vibe, like for rich people that don't know any better. It's just weird. But the thing is, once in a blue moon, they make something like really good. Like, it's so weird. When I see Amiri in stores, it is so much better than Amiri runways. Individual Amiri pieces can be really sick, but it's kind of hard to wear them because, like, who wants to go out being like, yeah, look at my Amiri jeans? Nobody. Makes you look like a goober. You don't want to look like a goober. But Mike Amiri, I'm glad you broke this off. I don't know if any of you follow Mike Amiri on social media, but he has that tone that I hate so much. He has that like grind set tone. Like he'll post the quotes and all these things like hard work will always get you somewhere. Don't let them tell you no. You push on with your vision. And it's like, I get it. He came from the bottom. He worked real hard. He thinks he's great at what he does, but fashion is not a meritocracy. And that is the impression that he gives off. He wants you to believe that if you're really good, you will be successful, but it's not true. Fashion is a business, and a business where networking and connections are incredibly important. If you are a nobody from Utah making collections locally, like some of the best fashion collections that have ever been made, I think there's a solid chance that you never get anywhere and you fail and go bankrupt. that's how important it is to be in like a major center and make connections. So it's not a meritocracy, although talent and hard work are, of course, important as they are in any capitalist society. But it's just the tone that gets me. So yeah, I agree. This hot take is in agreement with me. All right. I like Rick Owens' clothing. Me too. I feel more comfortable to pay more money for clothes made in ethical conditions with organic cotton and great design. Why do so many luxury brands not even use organic cotton? Why are they made in China or any poor country? So there's a lot of pieces to this. I don't know what luxury brands you're wearing, but they shouldn't be made in China. Like, I'm trying to think. I can't think of any luxury brands that make stuff in China. I have one undercover piece, I think, that was made in China. There are like some low luxury, lower tier, like premium brands that make their stuff in China, like, I don't know, like All Saints or Vince, stuff like that. But once you get to actual luxury, none of it should be made in China. And if you have like, I don't know, a Gucci thing that, or Rick Owens thing that says made in China, then it's fake. That shouldn't exist. But the point stands. Most things are not organic cotton. And it's something that should be pushed for, but I also think it's kind of a losing battle. There's so many aspects to it. I think it's important that you bring up being created in ethical conditions. And that's why I think it is important to purchase stuff that's made in the USA, in Portugal, in Italy, in France, all of these countries that have stronger labor laws where people are actually making a minimum wage and you know that stuff was created in decent conditions. It's incredibly important, and that's why. So I was just talking to someone about this. I saw a trench coat and it was like $400 and they were like, wow, that's pretty expensive. And I was like, no. If there's one thing I've learned being into fashion, it's that if you see something as complicated as a trench coat and it costs less than like $300, that means whoever made that, whatever it's made out of, it's made out of absolute trash, like not sustainable, not organic, whatever, and it's made by people who are probably being paid slave wages. Clothing is very resource and time intensive to create, so it should be expensive. That's how you know, or at least can be somewhat confident, that the people in that chain are getting paid fairly to some degree. It's incredibly important. All right, last one. Last one's a doozy. Pyer is not that good of a designer. His commercial stuff is mundane, and his conceptual stuff can be very cheesy. So real quick, a mistake that was made here, Pyer is not the name of the designer. It's the name of the brand. The designer is Kirby Jean Raymond, or Jean Raymond. I'm not sure if he does the French pronunciation. But the take itself, pretty fair. So let's go through time. The Pyer regular season runway collections are like fine. They look decently made. They're vaguely interesting, but they're not special at all. The Reebok stuff, so like the super ready to wear stuff, is incredibly boring and one note. And I think they've done like multiple Reebok collections now, and every single one, it looks the same and is completely disposable. But now I want to talk about the couture show. The Pyer couture show from a year or two ago. Oh man, oh no. So it was very hard to criticize at the time. And I remember, I think I went over on the channel and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Very conceptual. Because basically every outfit was, I think, an invention that was created by like a black inventor. So incredibly conceptual. But the clothes of that couture collection, I urge you, look at them. I'll put them on screen here. The actual looks were a nightmare. They were a crime against humanity. Like the literalness with which they were created, the concepts, how literal-minded they were, was actually painful to look at. In that sense, as clothing, it is one of the worst clothing collections I have ever seen it actually offends me. And it's hard to say because the concept and the message behind it is so strong, but purely from a fashion perspective, it was terrible. And that's a very hot take for me to end this, so I think it's fair to end the entire video there. Thank you for watching. I hope we do this again. I really enjoy getting your opinions and reacting to them and answering them. So make sure you subscribe, watch the other videos, and we'll do this again soon. See ya.